let's talk about Yersinia Pestis, also known as our good friend the Black Death, or in a very non-specific name, the Plague. So, the Plague, well known for killing between 30 to 50% of the entirety of Europe, is caused by this bacteria, Yersinia Pestis. And it's a common misconception that the plague was spread by rats, when in fact it wasn't the rats themselves that spread the disease, it was the bacteria in a specific type of flea, and those fleas then infected those rats, and the fleas, when in big cities, there was lots of rats living very close with lots of people, so the fleas could very easily spread from rat to human. So, bacteria, flea, rat, flea, human. The rats themselves were just transmission for the fleas. Now, infection by Yersinia pestis actually had 3 forms in which it could take. The most well-known form is the bubonic form, which is why the Black Death is also called the bubonic plague. Symptoms of the bubonic plague include initially flu-like symptoms of fevers, chills, etc., but then results in swollen lymph nodes, which can then, they bubble up and form these things called buboes, hence the name bubonic plague. And however unpleasantly, these buboes may get to the point where they burst. Now, as highly unpleasant as that sounds, that is actually the type of plague that you want to get if you were to be so unlucky as to contract the plague. See, this is the most survivable form that the plague can take. With proper treatment, it has about a 10% mortality rate, and with no treatment, it has a 30 to 90% mortality rate, which isn't great, but at least with treatment, you're probably going to be fine, however unpleasant it may be. Another form that the plague can take is the septicemic plague, where the infection gets into the bloodstream, and that results in septicemia. This results again in initial flu-like symptoms, but then results in blood coming from places that blood should not be coming from. This can result in total organ failure rather quickly. Now currently, if treated, the mortality rate is between 4 to 15%, but if left untreated for longer than about 24 hours, it jumps up to an almost 100% mortality rate. So, untreated, it is almost always fatal. The final type is pneumonic plague, which is infection in the lungs and respiratory system. It, again, starts out like the flu, but then develops very rapidly into severe pneumonia, and one of the signs is coughing up blood. Again, it is almost always fatal when left untreated. And now you may think that, we're done with that. That was in the 1500s or whatever. I didn't look up the dates, but that was so long ago. We don't have to worry about that anymore. You're wrong. It's still around. The last large outbreak of the plague, last big one, was around San Francisco in California in the 1920s. Not particularly long ago. I just checked, the big plague outbreak was in the 1300s. My mistake, not the 1500s, but whatever. But even now, in 2023, there are still the occasional small outbreaks of the Yersinia pestis, particularly more in developing and third world countries, so to say, where the sanitation standards aren't quite the same as in Western countries. Fortunately, it is treatable with antibiotics. God forbid this thing ever becomes a superbug. But occasionally, those treatments are not available in said countries, which is unfortunate because we really don't want another outbreak of this shit. So yeah, the plague is still around.